Hi everyone, it's Gerry Dulac along with Ray Fittipaldo at Acrisure Stadium. The Steelers beating the Cleveland Browns 27-14. Your Steeler Report brought to you by Savina's, Kane and Gallucci, mesothelioma and asbestos lawyers with 85 years of experience. Call them for a free consultation. And Ray, wasn't a pretty game by the Steelers. Started slow offensively for sure. The Browns took a 7-3 lead. Jerry Jeudy down the middle of the field for that long touchdown. And then after that, the Steelers benefited from a couple missed field goals by the Browns, but they gained some traction in the second half. Russell Wilson, pair of touchdown passes, 2 big interceptions, and then 3 takeaways for the 4th game in a row. So they were able to walk away with a relatively easy victory that gives them a 2-game lead now in the division.
Might go a little bit unnoticed because it was the first of those 3 turnovers. I thought Keanu Benton's interception was really big.
Right.
This game had like all the marks of that first game in Cleveland, at least early on. Keanu Benton's interception set them up in plus territory, and a few plays later they were able to take a 10-7 lead. And from that point on, Jerry, they scored 24 consecutive points. So big momentum changer early in that game.
Yeah, they held the Browns without a point because of those 2 missed field goals for 43.5 minutes, Ray. They held them scoreless in the second and third quarters. I didn't realize this, but I went and looked. That's the 22nd quarter that they haven't allowed a point by the opponent. That's the most in the NFL this year. And so, what Cam Heyward said after the game, you hold a team to 14 points, they feel pretty good about that. And while the offense didn't perform, especially Russell Wilson, the way we've seen him perform the past 2 games, he was 8 of 16 for only 48 yards in the first half, 7 of 10 in the second half for 112 yards in those 2 touchdowns.
On the first drive of the second half, Jerry, he had 46 yards, just as many as he had in the first half. And that seemed to get him untracked a little bit. I thought his confidence picked up after that big touchdown pass to Van Jefferson, and a beauty to Pat Freiermuth down the seam there on the numbers. So in the end, Jerry, he finished with 101.1 quarterback rating. That's the 5th time in 7 games that he's been over 100. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's been very efficient too, Ray. We see him throwing the ball away when he has to, throwing it in the ground. We saw a lot of that in the first half, and he seemed to struggle without George Pickens. George Pickens was held out of the game with a hamstring injury. I was told that it's a grade 2 sprain, Ray, which means that's usually 2 games, which means he probably won't play next Sunday in Philadelphia either. And we saw Mike Williams get involved a little bit in the passing game. He had 1 catch negated by offensive pass interference when he appeared to push off. When you saw the replay, didn't look so bad, but he had that nice one-handed 22-yarder on the, that helped set up one of the other touchdowns. In fact, it was Freiermuth's touchdown, I believe. So we saw him at least get involved in the passing game, and we haven't seen that since the touchdown catch in Washington.
Yeah, you thought with Pickens out, maybe he would have a bigger game. And I thought all of his catches were big. There was another one for, I think, a 5 or 7 yard game, set up that 54-yard field goal. So that was also, a nice job by him. Scotty Miller, he had 3 catches for 38 yards.
And a big one on the sideline.
He only had 2 catches coming into the game, and that one, the 20-yarder late in the game, came, I think, on 3rd and 12, something like that. So, the secondary receivers stepped up big, and I think the Steelers surely needed that. We'll see what happens in Philadelphia next week. The Eagles are not the Browns, but it's going to be tough sledding without George Pickens.
Yeah, Scotty Miller was playing in the game because George Pickens was inactive with that injury. I'll tell you the other thing Scotty Miller did on Najee Harris' 20-yard run in the first quarter. He threw the big block that Najee ran behind. So he contributed in another few other ways. Ray, I don't want to forget to applaud Corliss Waitman. We saw what happened in the Cleveland game. His only punt was that chunk one for 50 yards that set up that final touchdown. He averaged 52.3 yards per kick. He, in his last one, of course, they muffed and the Steelers recovered Ben Skowronek, and that allowed them to run out the clock. But his punting today, flipping the field, was a big factor for the Steelers as well.
Yeah, that one that Kadarius Toney muffed, I think it was 58 or 60 yards, and you could see him just backing up. He had a hard time tracking it, and when you're able to do that, you can create turnovers. And how about Skowronek? Skowronek now has 2 fumble recoveries, also had one in the Commanders game. He gets downfield better than almost any gunner in the NFL. He's really good at that.
Ray, and so Dustin Hopkins misses 2 field goals for the Browns. That's 9 field goals he's missed that year. That's the most in the NFL. The converse of that, of course, is Chris Boswell. 36 field goals. He's only missed 3 all year. Another from beyond 50 yards. He's converted 11 from 50 or longer. This one from 54 yards. boy, if you wanted to, there's several players that you could put in the conversation for MVP for the Steelers. He is certainly one of them.
And a couple of those misses were longer. One was over 60 yards. So in a game like today where you see Hopkins struggle the way he did, that really kills your momentum. And conversely, when you have a guy like Boswell that you know you can count on, you have confidence going into the game that he's going to be able to knock down those kicks.
And those field goals, it was the timing of them too, Ray. And they weren't long ones. It was 43 and 36 yards, I believe it was. But one was on the last possession of the first half, and the other one was on the first possession of the second half. And that's usually when teams try to gain momentum, get some points going into the locker room, come out of the locker room, get some points, and they failed each time. And I think that really took a lot of the wind out of the Browns.
And how big was that? Because they get the score to 27-14 in the second half. If those two field goals were on the board, that would have been a one-score game. So, it was nice for the Steelers to have a little bit of breathing room in this game. But obviously, I think they're going to have to play much better in Philadelphia next Sunday if they're going to want to win that game.
Yeah, and Ray, we're not seeing Pat Freiermuth put up big numbers. Last week we saw him with 6 catches, but he's a lot of big plays, though, for this team. And we were scratching our heads early in the game. He was out of the lineup for 5 consecutive plays, including when they're down by the goal line. And I don't understand that thinking. I know Pat Freiermuth doesn't either. But he contributed with that touchdown, and then it was a nice play that Russell Wilson made on the 10-yard touchdown to Van Jefferson as well.
Yeah, a lot of complaining about Arthur Smith's personnel packages in the first Cleveland game. I thought it took him a while to maybe get his rhythm in this game, Gerry. Some head scratchers with the personnel he put out there in that first half. But you're right. Eventually Pat Freiermuth was going to start making plays in this game, and I thought that 20-yard touchdown was just it was a beautiful read by Russell Wilson. Put it on a line and pack on into the end zone.
Steelers 3-1 in the division. The Browns have now lost 21 consecutive games, regular season games, in Pittsburgh. Next 3 games for the Steelers: the Philadelphia Eagles on the road, the Baltimore Ravens on the road, and then Christmas Day against the Chiefs. Ray, those 3 teams are a combined 30-8. It's the toughest 3-game stretch of the season. Those games will reveal what these Steelers are. Are they really 10-3 with the third best record in the AFC, or are they just a team that maybe make the playoffs and doesn't have any more than that?
Yeah, a couple of notes before we go. Steelers can clinch a playoff berth next week. They could do that with a win, and they could also get in there even if they lose. There's a way for them to get in next week. So starting to get down to clinching scenarios for the Steelers a little bit earlier than they've been doing it, so that's kind of been a nice change of pace.
Yeah, next 3 games should be very interesting for the Steelers. Ray and I will be with you after that Philadelphia game next week at Lincoln Financial Field. For Ray Fittipaldo, I'm Gerry Dulac. You're watching Post-Gazette.com.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit Post-Gazette.com.